What's up, youth culture? Shaddai here. I have a question for you. Have you ever been tempted to do something you knew was a bad idea? Maybe even though you knew it was a bad idea, if you did the very thing you were tempted to do, you knew it would either feel good, taste good, smell good, whatever, you knew it would be good. I know I've been there, and it takes me back to when I was a sophomore in high school. I was in the back of a car, was unable to drive, and so I was constantly being driven to school, driven to friends' houses, driven everywhere. And in this instance, I was with my brother. He was a senior. We're both on the football team, and we're hanging out with some friends who are on a different football team. I didn't necessarily know them, but we had heard of them, and my brother knew one of the guys, and so we're in the back of the car, and there was a moment. It was kind of later on a Friday evening. We had football practice earlier, and usually I carried a Gatorade with me everywhere. But in this instance, I was in the back of the car, extremely thirsty. And so I tell the people in the car, I'm like, hey, can we stop somewhere? I need a drink. I need a Gatorade. I need something to quench my thirst. And the guy in the passenger seat, I don't even remember his name, but I knew he was a cool football player who was a senior at a different school. And he turns back and he's like, I have something just for you. I'm thinking it's going to be a really, really good Gatorade. I'm thinking it's going to be like my favorite flavor, a blue Gatorade, blue cherry, whatever one. As long as it was going to be blue, I know it'd be really good. And he turns back and it's a different drink. Now I look at it, I notice that it's a can. I hadn't recognized it. I hadn't drank it before. And I grabbed the can and I realized that it was a beer. And in that moment, I didn't know what necessarily to do. I kind of felt a little bit of pressure. I felt a little bit tempted to just drink it because there's people around who, they thought it was cool and I wanted to be cool. So as I'm about to take a drink, I knew it was the wrong thing. I knew it was a bad idea. My brother's in the car and he's like, what are you doing? And in that moment, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. So I'm like, hey, I actually don't want this. You can have it back. And I remember being in that moment feeling tempted. Maybe you've been in moments. Maybe you can think of times in your life where maybe it was around friends or maybe it was alone at home. You felt tempted to do something that you knew wasn't the best idea, but you were tempted to do it because of how it would make you feel. We've all been there before. And what's crazy about temptation is we often, and maybe not what's crazy, but the reality about temptation is that sometimes we feel that it's like a cuss word. Like if we tell someone that we're being tempted by something, we tell somebody that we're tempted to do something, that we're like telling them something that is really bad. Especially as a Christian, you were tempted to do what? You were tempted to smoke what? You were tempted to drink what? And temptation oftentimes makes us feel like we can't tell anybody what we're really going through. Jesus was actually tempted as well. In Matthew 4 verse 1, the Holy Spirit, the Father, leads him into temptation. And the Bible literally says that Jesus was led by the Spirit into temptation, and he goes into this temptation. I love how it makes it very clear who was tempting Jesus. It says that it was the devil. And another word for the devil, the adversary, is the tempter. That one of the things the enemy actually wants to do in your life is to bring temptation. And one of the crazy things about what happens in this story with Jesus is that he's tempted by the very thing he's lacking. Jesus is hungry because he's been fasting, and so the devil comes and he tempts Jesus with food. And one of the amazing things that Jesus says, and I believe that this can actually help us when we feel and we're in moments of temptation. Jesus says this. He says, people don't live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. What does that mean? It means that in temptation, you're actually not going to find it within yourself to not do the very thing you want to be tempted by. Jesus actually tells us that in our temptation, we can actually look to the very things that God says as the answer to help us in temptation. And so for you today, wherever you might find yourself, maybe you're feeling tempted by a very specific thing. Maybe it's something that comes and goes, or maybe it's something that happens all the time. Can I tell you that Jesus, he was tempted so that in your temptation, you can actually find the answer in him. Love you so much. Have an amazing day.